types of forms that we've already learned about. What's one, Josh?
We learned about I had it in my brain.
Pass it to my left. Slope-intercept form. Yep, slope-intercept form is one form. That was the y equals mx plus b. What's another form, Johnny boy? If things are collinear, that's something we've learned. Yep, but that's not in a form. So I mean when we write out a form like that, what is that called? So collinear is something we did learn. Ella. General form. General form is the other one we've done. And that's this guy right here. Remember, everything's pushed to one side of the equation. It's all equal to 0. Today, what we're going to learn about is our friend slope point form. All right, let's look at a couple questions. So, determine the slope of this graph. The graph is right over here. So, a quick review to you guys on how we figure out how to calculate slope. You take a point, like this beautiful point A. You find another point where it goes directly through, let's say right here. And you figure out how far to the right and how high up it is. So it's 1 to the right, 2 up. So the slope is 2 over 1. The rise is 2, the run is 1. 2 divided by 1. Next part, list the coordinates of point A. Well, the coordinate is 1 there, negative 3 there, so it's 1 comma negative 3. And what it says in part C is it says compare your answers in A and B with the numbers that you found in the equation. So let's take a look at our answers. 2 and make 1 comma negative 3. And let's take a look at that. Where do we see some of those numbers? Where do you see the slope? Yeah, your slope in slope point form is right there. It's in front of the brackets on the x's. Do we see an x or a y anywhere, these numbers? Do we see 1 and 3 anywhere, Matthew?
Yeah.
Where do we see 3? Right here. So we take the y coordinate from one of our points, and it goes after our y, which I've drawn over. But they changed the sign. So it's minus the y coordinate that we used to have. And our x coordinate goes in there after the x. And they also changed the sign of that one. So it's minus the x point that you have. Let's try it again. Let's look at this one down here. Same thing. Determine the slope of the graph. And I want some of you to pay close attention to how I find this slope. We did it poorly on the test, on the quiz. And I think some of you thought you knew what you were doing, but you didn't. You made a slight mistake. Slope. You take one point that we know, find another that we know over there. You figure out how far those are away in rise and run. So it's 1, 2 points down, and it's 1, 2, 3 points to the right. So it's 2 over 3. But the important part to remember, and the important part that a lot of you forgot, on this question, we had to go down and to the right, not up and to the right. If we go down, what does that change? It makes it a negative, right, time. We went down, so it's a negative sign. And some people forgot that step, which is a huge step. If you have a negative, it means your rise is down. It's actually a fall. It should be fall over run. Any questions about that? Okay. Finally, let's list the coordinates of point B. The coordinates are negative 4 and 1. And then again it says compare your answers. Where do we see the slope, Addie? Right. And we see it in front of the brackets. Right there. That's a trend. Kendall, where do we see our x value from our point B? It's right here. After the x. So it's x minus the x value of a point on the line. So that's where that 4 came in. And that's why the symbol changed. You know, the negative there, now it's a positive. And where's the y value then? Colton, where's the y value? It's the negative one. The y value goes right after the y. Which means, I can get this to extend, which I probably can't. Yeah. Okay. Part G. I'm going to have to do on the side. It says consider the graph of the linear equation y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And based on our observations, we want to state the slope and write the coordinates of a point. So looking at just that equation, what is our slope? What would we call our slope? Josh?
The bit before, the x, the coefficient to the x.
Yeah, so m. So your slope is m. Now we have to list the coordinates of one of these points. What's the coordinates going to be? Aaron. We're just using this general form here. And you're right, but there's not actually a number, so what would you call it? Yeah, so it's just x1, but it's not negative, it's just x1. Because you switched the symbol. And what's the y value then, Matthew? Would it be negative y1? You change the symbol again, right? Yep. So it's positive y1. So if you're ever given something in this form, you know A, the slope, and B, a point that lands on the graph. This point, x1, y1, is somewhere on the line. Much like if we look up at our example, the point 1, negative 3 is somewhere on our line. Why are my slides so messed up? Okay. Your next slide should have said, so we've done investigation 1 and investigation 2. You should flip over. And it says slope point equation of a line. And it's got example 1. Example 1, it says, you've been given a point 6, 5, and you've been given a slope of 3. And it says, write out the form in slope point form. Slope point form is just that's the general formula, so you need to plug in the numbers where they're supposed to go. Your slope goes there. Your y value goes there. Then your x value goes there. Aaron.
Y minus 5 equals 3 bracket x minus 6.
Hang on, buddy. Y minus 5 is equal to 3, and in brackets, x minus 6. That would be your answer for A. Try B and C on your own, and I'll write the answer on the board in a few seconds. Write it in slope point form. The question gives you, in case you don't have your notes, the point they give you is 1 comma -1, and the slope is -4. Write that in the slope point form. Josh.
So when there's that 1 after the y, there's that 1 times y with the number after.
It's just saying, it's trying to identify itself as different than a general y. It's just saying this is a point. Matthew.
Answer.
Yeah, give it to me, man.
5 plus equals -4.
Who agrees? You all should have your hand up. Perfect, Matthew. Notice that the sign changed here because it was -1. When you subtract a negative, it flipped it to a positive. Go ahead and try C. C gives you the point -9, comma -8, and the slope is 1/2. All right, Ella, what's the answer? Get that? I agree. That would be your answer for C. Example 2 on your next slide is a review of putting things in as slope y form, like slope y-intercept form. I don't think you need any more review on that. If you do, you can ask me a question. What you would have to do is plug in those values, find b, and then rewrite your equation. Want to do one together? Okay, we'll do one together. Okay. Example 2, it says m is equal to 5. And it gives you the point -5, comma 2. And it says put that into slope-intercept form. So there. Yes, sir. General form is y is equal to mx plus b. What does m represent in that? Slope. What does b represent in that? Your y-intercept. We don't have a y-intercept. We just have some random point. So you can put that random point in for y and x, and then solve for b. And then you'll have your 2 points that you need. So that's going to go there. That's going to go there. That's going to go there. So let's rewrite it out. 2 is equal to 5 times -5 plus b. Notice that I put brackets around things when I put them in. That killed some of you guys on earlier tests. Okay. So 2 is equal to -25 plus b, which means that b is equal to 27. Because we just took that 25 and we put it to the other side. We added 25 to both sides. Matthew.
So we just put it in like
Yeah, that's if you wanted to graph it, that would also work. So if you were like, yeah, I can graph this really quick and figure out where the y-intercept is, that's fine. So if you graphed that point and then knew that the slope was +5 and you figured it all out, yeah, that works. Seems like a lot of work, and it might not work for some huge numbers or decimals, but it would work in some instances. Your answer is 27. What is your answer, Josh? Yeah, it's 0,27 would be your y-intercept. That's right, but that's not what I'm looking for. What's your final answer, Matt?
Don't you gotta write out the equation?
Yeah, Matt's going to give it to us.
Y equals fx plus
It asked for an equation. It didn't ask for the value of b. Finding the value of b was just a way of getting to the equation.
Don't you put the value of x in x?
Nope, because when we write things in form like that, you leave the y empty and the x empty. So you can find any y and x. That make sense? Beautiful. Example 3, we won't do b. Example 3, the line on the grid passes through at least 2 points with integer coordinates. Determine the equation of the line in general form. You need to find the slope of the line and then plug in one of the points that you have. We'll do that one too. So if you look at that graph, you should be able to figure out that the slope is -1, 2, 3 divided by 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your slope. Just by looking at the graph, you can figure that out. To get it in form, we need to use this. Jared's back. You need to plug in one of your points that you have on the graph. Oh yeah, it does ask for general form. Beautiful. To get it into general form, we can write it in slope-intercept form and then convert it, right? So we actually want to find it in. This way too. Now we're going to do Delhi. So we want to find it in that form, then convert it, because that's easier. Which means you need to plug in a value to find your y-intercept. Because if you look at that graph, you can't easily figure out where the y-intercept is. It looks like it's about -4.5. That looks like doesn't give you the right answer. So plug in the values that you know. It crosses the graph at -6, 0. That's the point I'm going to plug in here. So 0 is equal to -3/4 times -6 plus b. -6 times 3 is 18. What's 18 divided by 4? 4.5. So it actually worked out pretty well. Move it to the other side. -4.5 is equal to b. That means we can put in our m value, put in our b value, move our y value to the other side, and be happy. Sort of. What's our problem? What do we have to do with general form? Get rid of the fraction, right, Joe? How do we get rid of the fraction? Times it by? Times it by whatever's on there. What's on there? 4. So multiply everything by 4, because we can't have general form with fractions. Emma? Yeah. So there's 2 ways to do it. You could do multiply it by just positive 4 and then move everything over, or you can multiply everything by negative 4, get rid of your negative right away. Your choice. You'll get the same answer both ways. So let's multiply by negative 4. Sound like your style. So it'll become negative 4y equals 3x plus 18. 4 times 4.5. 18. And then you have to move that negative 4y over because general form has everything on one side. So your final answer is 0 is equal to 3x plus 4y plus 18. That's general form. Being able to convert between those 3 forms is going to be important. And that's good for that lesson. Yes, you may. So, what you guys have for the rest of class? And you have